I just wanted to share my experience with this in case anyone else is considering it, because I have actually been putting it to work around my yard, not just looking at pictures online. If you have trees that drop branches after wind, if you do seasonal pruning, or if you are just tired of hauling piles of limbs to the curb, this type of machine is for you. If all you ever deal with is a bag or two of leaves, it might be more tool than you need. But if you end most weekends with stacks of sticks and branches that never seem to shrink, this can make that pile manageable. What makes this one interesting to me is that it is small enough that I can move it around without needing a trailer, but it still has the kind of power that can actually chew through real branches. It is not the kind of chipper you feed huge logs into, and it is not pretending to be. It is built around a gas engine, and in day-to-day use, that matters because you are not limited by a power cord or a circuit breaker. I can roll it to the back of the property and work where the mess is, instead of dragging everything toward an outlet. On the outside, it feels like a straightforward steel machine. The panels and the chute feel solid when I grab and shake them, and it does not feel like thin, decorative metal. The finish on mine has held up fine so far, even after getting dusty and being stored near the edge of my shed. It is not something I would leave out in the rain, but normal outdoor use has not made it look rough. The wheels are a big part of the experience. They are large enough that I can pull it over uneven ground and small roots without fighting it the whole way. The weight is noticeable when I lift one end to pivot it, but it is not the kind of weight that makes me dread moving it. I can reposition it solo without feeling like I am about to throw my back out. Setup was pretty normal for a machine like this. It was not hard, but I still took my time because I wanted everything lined up and tightened correctly. It took me around half an hour, and most of that was me double-checking the fasteners and making sure the chute and the feed area were sitting the way they should. Once it was together, the daily routine became consistent. I wheel it out, check fuel, check oil, and clear the area so I am not tripping over branches while feeding it. Starting it is what you would expect from a small gas engine. When it is cold, it takes a little more attention. Once it is warm, it starts more easily. It likes fresh fuel, and I learned pretty quickly that it runs more predictably when I do not let old gas sit in it for too long. The fuel tank is large enough that I am not constantly stopping to refill, which matters because chipping is one of those jobs where you want to get into a rhythm and just work through the pile. In real use, the headline for me is that it handles branches up to about 3 inches in diameter as long as you are realistic about what you are feeding. A straight, dry branch goes through differently than a green, forked branch with a lot of side shoots. When I feed it clean, fairly straight limbs, it pulls them in and chips them without drama. When I get into twisty pieces with knots, I slow down and let the machine work, instead of forcing it. If I try to rush, that is when any chipper will remind you that it has limits. Most of my testing has been typical yard cleanup. After pruning, I had a mix of thin, whippy branches, a bunch of medium limbs, and a few thicker pieces that were close to the maximum size. The smaller stuff disappears fast. With medium branches, it stays steady, and the output is consistent wood chips that are useful for mulch paths or to spread around trees. The thicker pieces are where technique matters. I found it helps to feed the thicker end first when possible and keep a firm grip, not because it feels dangerous in my hands, but because it can grab and pull suddenly when the blades catch. I also learned to trim off little side branches when they create a wide profile that wants to snag at the opening. A few seconds of trimming saves a lot of annoyance. Noise is real, like any gas-powered chipper. I do not run it without ear protection. That is not optional for me. The vibration is there too, but it does not feel out of control. On level ground, it stays put. On uneven ground, I make sure it is stable before I start feeding material. I also keep an eye on the discharge area. It throws chips where it throws chips, and if the wind shifts, you will wear some of that. I ended up setting it so the chips blow into a spot I can rake later, or into a pile I can scoop. The thing I appreciate is how much volume it reduces. A messy stack of branches that would fill up several yard waste bins turns into a much smaller pile of chips. That is the main reason I keep using it. It turns cleanup from an all-day hauling and bundling job into something that feels more like processing, then moving one manageable pile at the end. There are also a few limitations that are worth saying out loud. This is not a leaf vacuum. If you feed it a lot of loose leaves by themselves, they do not behave like branches. They can blow around and they can clump, depending on moisture. It does better when leaves are mixed in with twigs, or when you are chipping branchy material that naturally carries leaves with it. Wet, stringy yard debris can also be a pain. If something is flexible and fibrous, it does not always chip cleanly, and it can slow things down. When my pile had some green, bendy pieces, I had to be more patient and feed smaller amounts. I also want to address something from my own workflow. This machine does not have a mobile app and it does not have smart features. That is not a complaint. In this category, I actually prefer that. What matters is that it starts, runs steadily, and chips consistently. The only support I have needed has been basic manual reading and common sense maintenance, like keeping the engine oil at the right level, checking fasteners, and cleaning out packed debris after a session. After several uses, my overall impression is that it is a practical tool for someone who regularly deals with branches and wants to reduce yard waste without relying on electrical power. It is built to be rolled around, started up, and used in short or long sessions. It rewards steady feeding and reasonable expectations. It can be frustrating if you try to shove in awkward forked branches without trimming, but that is true of every chipper I have used. When I work with it instead of against it, it saves me time and it keeps my yard waste under control. If you are thinking about getting one, I would mainly ask what your yard waste looks like most of the time. If you have recurring piles of branches and you want chips for mulch, it makes sense. If your cleanup is mostly grass clippings and soft garden waste, you might not get the same benefit. I will post full information about the 7 HP Mini Wood Chipper Shredder in the comments section. See you in the following videos.